Welcome back to the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. I'm Ed Holinsky. Got another great guest here today. We're taking a trip down memory lane over to Kenmore. This one, the 1969 Kenmore West football team in that era of Kenmore West athletics. From that 1969 team, we have the one and the only Bill Tepas. From his I guess this is your winter home in Florida, or is this year round for you now, Bill?
No, I'm back home for 5 months, from middle of May to October,
All right.
middle of
Well,
October.
hey, welcome. This has been we've had a conversation beforehand, and I've always been intrigued by the 1969 Kenmore West football team and coach Jules Yakapovich. However, I want to start with this. Give us a little bit about your background growing up in the Kenmore area and how you got involved in sports back then.
Oh goodness, that's you could ask anybody that. Well, back then it was the time of the baby boomers, and there were kids in every house on every street. You didn't have to go far to put a touch football game or a wiffle ball game or what do you call pitcher's mound out in baseball, where you only needed three people to play. But to get people together, I gave a speech one time and I said, the baby boomers, we had nothing, but we had everything. But we didn't need to be entertained. We entertained ourselves. And back then, you didn't have an awful lot. You had a mitt, a bat, a football, a basketball, and that's what you did with it. And consequently, there were literally, as you know, thousands and thousands of kids that played sports. I mean, when I went out for Little League Baseball at 8 years old, you tried out for the team. You didn't just walk on. Today, it's all divided up and everybody makes a team. That's not how it was back then. If you didn't make the team, you went to another team. Interesting enough, I played with Mr. Fountain, who was the coach on our side, and on the other side, every year we'd battle for the playoff championship with retrucking. When we turned 10, we combined the two teams. The 9-year-olds or the 10 years old moved up to the bigger diamond. We were still in the small diamond. We combined the teams to win the state championship in Utica. I played with, put it this way: the pitcher, catcher, first base, second base, shortstop, and third base are all in their high school Hall of Fames. From Timmy Pierce to Jimmy Dunnigan, Jimmy Polano, Timmy Lennon played for St. Joe's basketball. Buddy Bounton played football. That was our team. So we dominated those leagues, and it was just a thrill of a lifetime. By the time we turned 13, Mel Polano coached us. Now, if you don't know who Mel Polano is, we got a serious problem. He was, the coach at Timon forever. He's an icon in Western New York. So he coached us at 13, which was really just a thrill, So, anyways, how did I get involved in sports? That's what you did.
Regarding football, did you come up through the sandlots, or did you play organized Tyrell football or any type of association football in the Kenmore area?
That's a great question. I went out for football. Everybody played for the Panthers in Tonawanda, so I said, "Well, boy, I should play for the Panthers." I went out one year and didn't much care for it. Like I say, I was a baseball guy. There I played, all the time. So I went out for the team, and I'll never forget, it was team picture day. And I was home watching TV, the Babe Ruth story. And my mother goes, "Don't you have pictures?" I was an hour and a half late for the picture, never got in the picture. I didn't play football again until sophomore year in high school.
Okay. And what drew you back into playing high school football at that point?
I got the mouth guard in ninth grade. I lived on Thorncliffe, 3 houses from Herbert Hoover. All right. And the backyard was baseball and football diamonds right there. I decided as a sophomore that I probably missed out on that and I should probably participate. And awful glad I did. Playing football at Kenmore West was extremely unique and fitted me perfectly. One of those is we never practiced in pads. We never hit during the week. For me, that was just fine. It was all speed and timing. That was everything we did. So never wore pads. We scrimmaged once. We had one practice game before the season started, and we never really put on the pads. I think Friday we might have put on the pads just to make sure they fit. And, you went through the process like that, but we never hit anybody. And that to me was the only way to play. So it fitted perfectly. You come out and say, okay, first team offense, run a post pattern. Second team offense, run a post pattern. First team offense, run a post pattern. Second team post pattern. First team post pattern. Second team post pattern. You did that, then you would switch sides to the right side. Post pattern, post pattern, post pattern, post pattern, post pattern. Okay, hook pattern, hook pattern, hook pattern, look pattern, post. That's all you did. So it was speed and timing. Okay, that's what everything was. To me, that was perfect. So we'll go on and on, but I'll let you ask some questions because you won't be able to get me to stop.
So I assume that your sophomore year you played JV.
That's correct.
Did the Kenmore program, you ran the same programs on varsity and you ran the same programs, same plays on JV? Was it consistent through it? No.
George Stock was the JV coach. I'm not sure Yak and him saw the same thing. George Stock played line for Syracuse University when Jim Brown played there. So he was all more NT mentality, off tackle power, all of this stuff like that. I hated it. Absolutely hated football. I wasn't sure I was even going to continue on. And at the time, I really didn't understand, what was going on. As far as what the varsity was doing to JV. But the JV was punch and drive and all that stuff. I did not like it at all. They did not coordinate from one team to the other, from varsity to JV at all. No.
How big were your squads in JV and on the varsity level at Ken West?
Give an example. When I was a sophomore, I went out, there were 200 kids tried out for the team. That would mean the existing players and new people trying out. There were 200 people. They put your name on a board in the locker room that ran the length of the locker room. Every day you walk in, part of the board's taken down. You looked at it. If your name wasn't on the board, you went home. So there was a massive attention to all sports at that time. The school was 3,000 students in the school. So, you had the same thing. When I went out for baseball, there were almost just short of 100 people went out for baseball. And you sat there and you kind of shook your head going, how does the coach know I even exist? And what would happen, there'd be a feeder program. Of course, in ninth grade, nobody went to Kenmore West in ninth grade. There was only 3 grades. So you had Kenmore Junior that went to the Kenmore West school. You had Franklin that went to the Kenmore East school, and you had Herbert Hoover that was divided. So if you played sports there, the coach would write a resume for you to pass on. And that sped the process because, before either baseball season or football season, what is there now? I think 3 weeks before the first game, something like that. So you got 3 weeks to put. You got 200 people there. So you're cutting the first few days of and you just go, no, and it's not going to happen. So you're advanced in that way. Baseball, I went right to the advance, right up there. I was brought up the varsity and things like that. In football, because I didn't play ninth grade, you didn't have that advancement as fast.
You had to prove yourself then.
Correct. You had to go through a little bit more process than you did if you already played lineman or defensive back or halfback in the ninth grade, because they already knew a little bit of what they had, and they had to promote very quickly within, to put a team together and get ready to play.
Jules Yakapovich was your coach and one of the preeminent coaches in Western New York history. Devised the radar defense. He was a former Marine, played college football at Colgate. What do you recall about Yak, and what was your relationship like with him?
Yak was a disciplinarian, very, very old school. He loved 2 things: football and his country, and that's how he ran his show. I don't think in my senior year I don't think I had a discussion with him. You didn't speak. You just did what you had to do. I'm sure you're going to get to it, but with the sheer numbers that we had, uh, speaking of 68 and 69, nobody played two positions. You played one position. There was a first string offense, first string defense. Second team offense was the receiving team on kickoffs. Second team defense were the kickoff team. You had a kicker, you had a punter, and you had a field goal guy. Nobody did anything other than that. So that's exactly what you did. There was no discussion to anything. He told you exactly what was expected. If it wasn't expected, you might be running laps or you might get by it there. But he was a discipline. Nobody really said anything. The only time anybody ever talked is when he left the huddles after practice and the captain said a few things. Other than that, there was real no, he talked. He ran the show. There's no discussion anywhere.
You guys, in those years that you played a unique offense and definitely the radar defense. So before we get into the offense of it, and you just mentioned about everyone having specialized duties and responsibilities, and you didn't practice in pads. Did you run your offense against the radar defense in practice, or did you bring your second string? You had a scout team that played a conventional defense.
That's correct. They would play the opposing defenses. Yes. So in other words, if we were going to play Tonawanda, they'd play Tonawanda's defense.
And back then, you didn't have a lot of assistant coaches on your squad. I mean, it's not like today when you get an army of assistant coaches with 5 or 6 gentlemen that are your assistant coaches. You may have had Yak and maybe 2 assistants, and that was it.
Well, we had Yakapovich, we had Fleischman for defense. We had Jerry Tutwiler. We had Yak's son was there. There might have been another in there. No, you wouldn't have 8 to 10 coaches like you have now, but I think we actually had more than they probably had the years prior to that, back in the late 60s or the early 60s, where you probably had 2 coaches. That's all you had. So, we did have quite a few assistant coaches. We had specialized coaches for the special teams and things like that, but nowhere where it is today. But I think nowhere where it was back in the early 60s either. I think it was a transition type of period where we started bringing in other coaches for other duties.
For those of the people who are not aware of the radar defense, give us a little bit of synopsis of what that really entailed.
Okay, well, again, I'm not going to profess to be a specialist on the radar defense because I didn't do that, but it was a reading defense, the way I understand it, because they were getting overpowered rather than going head on head with an offensive lineman who technically has an advantage because he knows where he wants to take you. You would take the opposite stance. So he blocks right, you go left. The whole idea of it was quickness and strength to hit the holes as quickly as possible. So you'd read where the offense was going and you'd hit those holes very quickly. Defensively, as we get into the actual team, the defense were tough kids. They were tough kids. They were tough kids. These weren't let me just move over here and see if I can make a tackle. These guys were headbutters, and they were very, very good at what they did. So they ran that defense very well, and the scores against us, I guess, tend to prove that.
Offensively, you guys were no slouches as well too. That 1969 season, you ran up 389 points. You gave up 67. Your average team weight on your starters were 160 pounds, soaking wet probably. And defensively, you gave up 60 yards on average rushing per game and 70 on passing. And I assume a lot of that was in mop-up roles because you won all your games by an average of 34 points. It was a total domination that season.
Yes.
What was it like to go through a season like that?
At the time, I didn't know any difference. I just thought that's what you did. I mean, when you're a kid, you're playing football, baseball, anything. You're playing to win, and you know the difference in what you win isn't as necessary as you win. You win by 1 point, you win by 30 points. It's all the same. You won the game. Um, some things were very unique back then. On the offense, we played a spread offense with an option offense. That means an option to run or pass. You had 5 eligible receivers. You had 2 wide receivers, 2 halfbacks, and a fullback. And quite frankly, well, all of them could catch and run. So that made it very difficult to start with. And you had a quarterback that could throw the ball, and that made it difficult. You had playing offense, you only had one real eligible receiver. In other words, other people would go out for passes, but you'd only have one, which is probably the only thing we probably didn't do that they do today. In other words, so if I'm running a hook pattern, a post pattern on the left side wide receiver, that's the eligible receiver. That's the guy that most of the time is going to get the ball. If the ball was, if you didn't and it was covered, then you'd yell scramble left or scramble right. So as soon as you heard scramble right, all the receivers would then go to an open area. That made it real difficult. We tended to make a lot of yards on a scramble play, but yet we threw to the intended receiver the majority, 80, 90% of the time. So what that did was it made the defense very difficult to guard. For example, if a wide receiver took his man and went over the middle to where the other zone was being covered, it left the 2 halfbacks to take really linebackers against them, which was extremely difficult too, because these people, like I say, we had 5 excellent receivers, could not only run, but they could catch. So between that, then you had an option offense. We're saying, okay, I've got to worry about covering this guy, but oh shoot, now they're running the ball, which left holes available. So it made it very difficult. One of the things that happened when you talk about 69, 69 was one of those years that all the stars lined up in a row. I mean, just perfectly. If you look at the NFL at that point in time, which was very competitive, really no one ran away with the league. In 68, we were NFL champs with a 7-1 record. We lost to Lockport on a field goal on a Haley rainy night that a guy kicked a 35-yard field goal. We lost the game. All of the games we played that year were close. We were a younger team then, okay? We were a younger team, more like more teams. You know, they had a combination of maybe a few sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Yak in his junior year, in our junior year, 68, always had a person running into play, okay? That year, he chose the quarterback would be the guy that ran into plays. So he'd have Gary Stryker, who was an excellent athlete, running a play for Robbie Sutton. Robbie would come out and Gary would go in. Well, you totally pulled a good athlete out of the ability to play in the game. They only played halftime, okay?
Right.
And we were a younger team. I think the point that I'm making that the NFL was extremely competitive back then. In 69, what happened was everybody was a senior, okay? This all fell into places. There were 2 sophomores that started, okay? Excellent players, nothing to take against them, but you probably could have found a replacement and made it an all-senior team. But nonetheless, they played very well, and that's not to take anything away from them. The second teams, offense and defense, were made up largely of seniors, okay? So, you know, maybe 50-50 seniors. So there were plenty of seniors that sat on the bench, didn't get an opportunity to play much at all right? So also that year, 69, we brought in a center, Dennis Coons, who was our center. He's probably 6'4". He came from some school, I couldn't tell you where, out of state, I believe. He came in. We had Rich Chandra that transferred over from Cardinal O'Hara, who played offensive tackle. And we had Glenn Davis, who played fullback, all right, from Cardinal O'Hara. So anywhere you had a senior or a junior opportunity kind of got filled in by 3 transfers that we had come in. Now, Yak again, senior year 69, would switch players back and forth. Okay. That year he decided to change the fullbacks. So he would put in a fullback for Glenn Davis. Glenn would come out of the game. Glenn would go in. That's how you got the plays in. Well, it turned out that didn't last very long because Glenn Davis, okay, which probably isn't a common, well-known name, averaged 10 yards a carry. Okay. Now, he outran our halfbacks, more yards per carry. He outperformed the entire league at 10 yards a carry. Okay. Yet very little is made of him just because he was overwhelmed by the rest of the team, who that included Robbie Sutton, Gary Stryker, Bob Miller, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So when you take a look at team that all these things fell in a row, you have a person gaining 10 yards a carry that gets little recognition. Also, let me mention at the time, the Tonawanda News, which one time and only time only made our team all league, first team and second team. Okay. Which was, I guess, indicative of the team's results that year.
It's an amazing story. It really, really is. I mean, it makes you wonder, and just listening to you, how, sharing the ball or getting the ball, how often did you get the ball?
Let me tell you this. I was interviewed for something like this in the past, and I stopped and I asked them the question. I said, tell me something. Who do you think the star of the team was? And they said, Robbie Sutton. I said, no. The star of the team's the guy that got the ball. That was the star of the team. And you had to share the ball with a lot of people that were more than capable. I probably averaged as a wide receiver, and it's funny, the halfbacks got more receptions than the wide receivers because, again, they were going against mostly linebackers. If you could take the outside or the deep people out, they had more room to run. And Jules just loved to throw to halfbacks all day long. So I probably had thrown in my direction on an average of 3 passes a game. Out of all the time we threw the ball, 3. And now when you got the ball, now remember, you went to practice, you did exactly what you were told, and then finally in the huddle, they call your play. You're like, good Lord, here we are. This is it. Let me tell you something. You ran like a beast, and you got to that spot as fast as you could, and you did all you could because you might not see the ball for another quarter or 2 because, that's how it was. I mean, give me an example. You get back, you score a touchdown. The team like today don't jump on you or anything like that. We didn't do anything like that. You scored a touchdown, sitting there going, where is everybody? They're lining up for the extra point. Like, goody for you. You scored a touchdown. Shut up, get the play. Let's go. We've got the next play to run. So there was no celebrating going on. Even after the games, when you won, it wasn't like, oh, what a great game. We did this. It wasn't any of that. You just sat there and go, okay, we did exactly what we're supposed to do. Like your parents told you to take out the garbage. You take out the garbage, bring back the garbage. Nobody said, hey, way to go. You brought the garbage in. So you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You went out, you ran the play, you caught the pass and did this. Okay. Now, at the time, I mean, just to give you an example, my average receptions were over 70% completions. Okay. Now, if you had a guy catching 70%, better than 70% of the passes, you'd throw to him all day long. Didn't happen. Didn't happen because he threw the other guy, and he threw the other guy, and he threw the other guy. We ran tackle eligibles. The tackle ran 2 touchdowns. He sat there and Castiglione runs for a touchdown. So I mean, and it wasn't at all that the competition was inferior. That's not the case. That wasn't the case at all. And I talk about the Kenmore East game. Kenmore East, when we played them in '69, was ended the season at 77-1. Okay, they were ranked number 2 in the state. We were ranked number 1. We beat them 44-0. We scored 37 points the first half and 7 in the second half. Okay, so I mean, there's a team. I mean, either we lightened up on it, which I don't think we did, but they got much better in the second half. So it was just one of those things that, like I say, all the stars came together and everything was just perfect.
What do you recall about playing against North Tonawanda?
I know in 1969 we were losing the game. I think it was 14-6 or 14-7. I didn't sense any panic because, again, I didn't realize the amount of score we were winning by meant anything. It was kind of like, oh boy, we've got another game here to play, and these guys are going to come out and hit us and attempt to win this game. Well, at 14-6 or 14-7 at halftime, we didn't go back and say, oh boy. I mean, I suppose we're looking to win the game. That's all we wanted to do, win the game. So if we win 17-14, that's good, or 21-14, that's good. We ended up winning the game 54-14. So, obviously something changed in the second half. And, that was the closest game we ever had, certainly at halftime, where we were losing. But we came out pretty good on the heads of that. But again, at the time, I have to stress, it wasn't that, after the games, we said, oh boy, look at that. We won 54-14 and we scored so many points in the second half. Wasn't that great? Blah, blah, blah. No, it was simply you went back, you took a shower, and, you were happy you won. But, basically everybody did what they were supposed to do. All right. If you didn't, you got replaced. You see? So
you bring up a good point there. I've read in the past, I'm not sure who I can attribute this quote to, that guys would rather want to get hurt instead of feel the wrath of Jules Yakapovich.
True. When I was a junior, I had 2 sprained ankles, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even ask for a tape job. I just kept running on the sprained ankles because I'll tell you what, he says, well, okay, go sit down. When you sit down, you never get up. He'd basically say, okay. I mean, he had plenty of bench strength to pull somebody in that was just dying to get into the game. And, I suppose in some cases, I mean, I used to sit there and see people being taped up. I think it was a cautionary measure. I didn't do that. I kept to myself and said, hey, look at, I'm going to go on this field, and when they call my play, I'm going to do the best I can to do this because, that was my only assignment other than, some blocking, which came with part of the deal. But my assignment was basically, when your number's called, you better do exactly what you prepared all week long and all season long to do. And if you're hurt, I mean, unless they dragged you off the field, you didn't get hurt. You continued on. So it wasn't so much the wrath of Jules Yakapovich as basically said, okay, go sit down. I got somebody else. And, you felt a little bit, I guess, replaceable. Right. Maybe that's the word.
I've heard it said by a former assistant coach, Chuck Williams of North Tonawanda, that Yak was quite the tactician and could make a lot of in-game adjustments. Before your games, were your offensive plays scripted, or was it just Yak getting a feel of what he wants to do and make adjustments on the fly during the game?
No, before every game, he knew the defense that we were playing. They'd scout and film the defense that we were playing, so he knew exactly the defense was playing, and he adjusted the plays that he was going to call based upon the defense that we saw. During the game, if that changed or things weren't working, then he'd change up the plays. But basically, I mean, he called the offense and defense at the time. So, we had a game plan going in. We'd always have, a bunch of plays that we're saying, okay, these are the plays we're going to run, and we practice them all week long. They might have been, 5 or 6 plays. This is what we're going to do. Maybe 10 plays. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. If it didn't, then we went to, plan B and started running other things. But, he had a good idea of exactly where we were going to go before we got there. And you knew your involvement at that time too. So, I mean, if we were practicing a certain pass play, I knew that this pass play was going to get called somewhere, in this game, because that's where he saw weakness.
After all these years, can you still recite some of the plays?
I know all my plays. Let me tell you this. I didn't need to know a play. If I knew if it was running left or right, okay, I was the left end. If it was running right, I only had to circle around, take my guy out, and hold him there. If it was going my way, I had to do the same thing and take him there. I knew it was a running play or a passing play. All I knew is, my ears went up when he called my play, and I knew exactly what my play was. So, no, can I sit there and probably tell you? I mean, I can tell you, they used to call the plays right and left. Let's say a post pattern. To the right, it was post. On the left, it was post S. Okay, or look and look S. So I was on the left side. Anything with the ES on the side that was coming my way, I paid attention to that real good.
You played in the golden era of the Niagara Frontier League. For people who don't understand what that was all about, describe what the Niagara Frontier League was back then and what it meant to you.
Well, the Niagara Frontier League, was a close-knit league at that point in time with more of a local flair. So you had Kenmore West, Kenmore East, Tonawanda, North Tonawanda. And I think Niagara Falls was in there, LaSalle, Lockport. So it was kind of a congested area of areas that you kind of knew about. I mean, today they may play Orchard Park. I never went to Orchard Park as a kid in my life. I thought there was someplace that no one ever went to, and who knows where that is. Even South Buffalo or Lackawanna, nobody knew where that stuff was. You had a bicycle and a pair of legs, and once in a while your father might take you in the car someplace, but you never left close to home. So Niagara Frontier League, which of course was long outstanding league, was something when you got in it. There was a history to it. There was a feel to it. There was a responsibility to it. All of those things. And, I was a Catholic school kid up till 8th grade. So I wasn't, public school aware until 9th grade. And by the time you got to Kenmore West, it was, this is how it goes. You thought it was the only league in the world. And it probably was at that time. I couldn't tell you what other league there was. As far as I was concerned, there was only Niagara Frontier League. So if you told me today there was another league, that was new to me, because I still don't know that there was another league. I know the city of Buffalo had a league. But other than that, I couldn't tell you if Orchard Park had a football team. I couldn't tell you if Orchard Park had a tree or a house on it. I have no idea. So the Niagara Frontier League was pretty much what you knew, and that's what was.
Did you even realize back then you were playing a small school or a vocational school like Trot or Newport, or did it even matter?
No, it didn't matter at all. As far as I'm concerned, the only team I ever heard anything about was Trot. Oh, Trot. Trot. They're not very Trot. And I'm going, I didn't take that attitude, but I think they did, as far as they weren't very good. And I couldn't tell you to this day, I guess they weren't very good. I don't know. But other than that, we didn't take anybody for granted. Like I told you, in 68, we were 7-1. I don't think we won too many games by more than 7 or 14 points. Every game was close, and we lost one game that year. So, we didn't go into 1969 saying, oh, we're superior or anything like that. Let me tell you, we're biting nails every game. We went out there and said, this is what you got to do. I think the nicest thing about it, again, was with the fact that you didn't have an overwhelming responsibility. You didn't have to play offense. You didn't have to play defense. You didn't have to play special teams. you only had your one position, and you had enough talent to do that. So your responsibility was to go out and do exactly what this is. How the team fared, like say North Tonawanda at 69, we were losing 14-6 or 14-7. That didn't, to me at the time, didn't say, oh boy, we're this or that or the other thing, we're losing. It just said, just do your responsibility. To myself, I said, well, throw me the ball more, maybe I can get more in this game. So you didn't look at it. I guess you looked at it as a team, but you looked at it as your own responsibility. In other words, get ready, because in order to do good, we have to have everybody doing exactly what they're told to do. And I guess that's true for everybody, but in this case, it was really overwhelming because you didn't do anything for 5 days, but exactly what you were supposed to do. You didn't involve yourself in anything, anywhere other than that one position 5 days a week, and then game time.
You had such a great program, and when you went on the road, how much hostility did you get from opposing fans when you went into their stadium?
They hated us. They hated us. I'll tell you this. I remember we were playing Tonawanda, and oh no, they didn't like us at all. We came with a good crowd all the time. And by the way, we should probably mention back then crowds were anywhere between 5,000 to 8,000 people
Right.
every game.
Right.
This is not 3-4 people in the stands. I mean, the lowest we had is 5,000 that year. The highest was the Kenmore East game, where the newspaper said there were 12,000 people there. So, and I would believe it. I mean, again, I didn't do much out of what I was supposed to do. I didn't sit there and really, I didn't remember too much of anything other than what I had to do. But I do remember glancing back and seeing there was like 10 deep in the end zone. I mean, it was just remarkable. I didn't sit there and say, oh boy, there's a big crowd, because again, you weren't allowed to think. You only were supposed to do, and that's exactly what you did. Now your question again, what did the other teams think of us? Okay, well, again, nobody welcomed us. And there's two examples I'd like to give you. First off, his senior year, 69, against Tonawanda. It was our last game of the year, I believe. And I had to do what's called a look pattern. That's you right over the middle. You just basically go over the middle, catch the pass, right? Well, I went up. The ball was high. I went up. The guy hit me from behind. Another guy in front flipped me over and landed on my ass, right? Boom, over my ass. And I hear these cheers going up. And I look to the right, and there was the end zone, and they were just cheering that I was, I got hit. And you son of a gun. I got up, got back in the huddle. Within the next quarter, they ran the same play, but it was a look and go. So when I came over the middle of the look, put up my hand, throw it here, boom, you take off down the middle. Beat the guy down the middle, went right up to the goal post where it was before, where they were cheering. And I just said, hello, folks, how we doing here? So I do remember that. The other one was junior year, which is a great story. We were playing Tonawanda again, the last game of the year, and it was a close game. So there were no places for us to go to change or to warm up. And it was a chilly night. I remember it was a chilly night. So, Jules says, let's go back to the buses. We'll get 15 minutes on the bus. He gets to talk to the coaches, and out we come. So we go out of the gate onto the buses where the buses were parked. 15 minutes later, we come out of the buses, and the person says, no, the gate's locked. You can't come in here. What do you mean? We just went to the bus. We can't come in here. You have to walk around to the main entrance on the other side of the thing to get in. So the whole team, 50 people marching around the whole place to get in the main gate to get down. We get there, they throw a flag, delay of game. Okay. We went out and scored 5 touchdowns. Don't quote me exactly. 5 touchdowns in 7 plays. I think it's 5 touchdowns in 7 plays. First play, touchdown. They got the ball, fumbled, whatever, got the ball, next play, touchdown. I think we ran 1 play, next play, touchdown. So the game was over in 6 minutes into the second half because we just, and the place was, I never saw anybody get so upset. I mean, again, after the game, you jumped up, you were happy you won the game. But we were like, when we saw Jules got upset, oh my God, now the coach is mad. He's yelling, trying to get in this gate. We're going, holy smoke. The Grand Poop is upset. We're upset too. So we were just, oh my God, I've never seen people walking around smacking people. We're going to kill him. We're going to kill him. I never saw this before. What do you mean we're going to kill him? We're going to kill him. Let's go kill him. Well, we went out and took care of business. So that was an interesting, fun time because that was the last game of the year, and we just ran all over him at the end.
Let me ask you, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't. What was Jules' relationship with some of the other NFL coaches like George Vetter and Clint Small and Sparky Adams and Babe Mazza and maybe Pete Rayo up at Newport at that point?
I have no idea. None whatsoever. None whatsoever.
He just took care of his business and worried about his own program and his own kids at that point. Correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be privy to any conversations between coaches. I can tell you, everybody, I guess the Kenmore East, Kenmore West coaches didn't get along too well. We used to do this thing senior year where he set this up where two different things we do. He'd say, okay, everybody line up on the line before the game. Okay, we're all lined up on the sidelines before the game. The captains are going to march out 10 feet, and then when I give the signal, the whole team's going to come off the sideline and march up 10 feet, like we're attacking them. So now all of us are like 10, 15 yards onto the field. The other one was the captains are going to go out there, and after the coin toss, the whole team's going to run on the field and jump around the captains and go berserk, just to spook the other team out. I thought that was a novelty. He'd come up with some of these things that were just, off the wall. It reminds me of Kansas City Chiefs this year. And you saw them when they got in the huddle. They all circled around the goofy huddle. Jules would pull something like that. That was kind of like the same thing. Let's show them. So now the next year, we go out there and everybody moves up 10 feet. Doesn't Kenmore East do the same thing? They bring their captains out, the whole team comes in. And then they do the same thing. They bring the captains out, the captains walk in, the whole team joins on the field. So we jump on the field, they jump on the field. Oh boy, here we go. So yeah, I mean, there was a bit of a rivalry, obviously.
You segued in for me the Kenmore East, Kenmore West rivalry. Refresh people's memories on how that was back in '68 and '69.
That's all you really lived for. I mean, it's all you lived for. It was a war, and we were very fortunate. Senior year, we beat them up pretty good, certainly in the first half. But junior year, I mean, it was a battle. These guys, that's what they played the season for. To play Kenmore East, that was your arch rival, and that's what you played for. It was. I was very fortunate that between baseball and football, I never played and lost to Kenmore East. I should say that senior year we did lose to them. Other than that, we beat them quite handily all the time. But senior year in baseball, we lost to them.
Was there a mutual respect when you played the other Kenmore school, when you played Ken East, or a dislike, or how did you approach that?
Well,
a lot of them were your neighbors.
Right.
People that you grew up with or lived across the street from or down the block from.
Like I told you, way back to our opening statement, when I played baseball, when we combined teams way back in at 10 years old, a lot of those people played football and baseball for Kenmore East. When you went to Herbert Hoover, half the school divided, and they went to Kenmore East and Kenmore West. So no, there was very much respect, and a liking too. We didn't cater to losing at all. And while we're on the field to play, you played to win. But I think afterwards, you didn't dislike people. You were friends with people because you knew them, and they made friends with people that were at Kenmore East, so you got to know them. So there was a lot of back and forth between Kenmore East and Kenmore West as far as socializing to some degree. But when it came to sports and competition, it was strictly gloves off.
You had quite the baseball career at Kenmore West as well, too. You were all league, um, all Western New York, or all NFL, I should say.
Yes.
Then you didn't play any college football. You didn't play any college baseball. As you were telling me, you went to Genesee Community College, where guys like Gary Stryker went to the University of Miami and Robbie
Yep.
Sutton to Syracuse. Any interest in pursuing it going forward, or?
No, I did in football. No, I did for a brief moment, but I really didn't care to do it. I told you um, at the time, so many of these rules have changed for the better. Going over the middle and just clocking people. I mean, you watched them NFL games 10, 15 years ago, you go over the middle for a pass. And I go, I'm really not interested in that. When I transferred to Brockport, I did take a look at it. There were like 250 people in the stands. And I said, why would I play for 250 people when I used to play for 5,000 people? Why would I do that? Baseball was always an interest to me. I continued playing muni ball for 6 years after high school. And then somewhere around that time in Brockport, I took up softball. And then I traveled the East Coast, Canada, playing softball with Plant 6. I don't know if you're aware of Plant 6, but Plant 6 was the number one team. I played 2 world tournaments in softball, 2 Can-Am championships, softball Hall of Fame. So I did that. I played in Georgia, played Virginia Beach. I played in Syracuse, Rochester, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I played all throughout Canada. I played in the Can-Am tournament. I played for a Canadian team. I was all Canada up there. So baseball kind of faded away a little bit my senior year in high school or college when I decided to stay there. And remarkably, somebody asked me to play a softball game for beer. We're going to play this organized team, so we're putting this team together. Well, I guess I played so good, they said, play for me. And then I got kind of pulled into a semi-tournament team in Medina. Then I got called up to play for Honeys in Niagara Falls. Then I got called to play for a team in Canada. And I got called back to play for Plant 6. And each time I traveled extensively. I played well over 100 games a year. Well over 100 games a year. I played just about anywhere.
And then you ended up in 2013, inducted in the Western New York Softball Hall of Fame. And then in 2019, the Kenmore West High School Athletic Hall of Fame. Yeah. What do those Hall of Fames mean to you?
Oh, dear. Well, softball was a life. It was a livelihood. You did that. I mean, I traveled every week or every other weekend. I traveled every week, might have been local 2-3 hours away, but every second week it might be a far journey than that. So, it's you become, and you play with the best people in Western New York, so it was just a lifestyle and something that I loved. So that was absolutely wonderful. Great memories. Going into Kenmore West Hall of Fame, that was really a treat in the fact that, my 2 brothers went to St. Joe's. My brother Dale and Dennis. So for me, the youngest, going to a public school, I was the only TPS to walk into a public school. It was a shock. So going there and succeeding within the system was great. Was great. I mean, obviously, I played for some great players, had a wonderful time. High school was just, I loved it. I loved it. I think I skipped school one day, and halfway through, I went back to school and said, this is what's going on. I'm going back to school. So going into the Kenmore West Hall of Fame was absolutely fantastic because my mother so much rejected the fact that I was going to go to a public school, not a Catholic school,
We talked about a lot of different things in this conversation. What would you like to talk about that I haven't brought up? The floor is yours.
Well, I think before this started, I wanted to make sure I touched base with, how the offense operated, and really, a fellow like Glenn Davis that averaged 10 yards a carry and outran the entire league. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in Western New York that averaged 10 yards a carry. And I don't know, maybe he didn't get the accreditation he deserved because other people were so good. Other than that, I think I covered it all. I'm sure as soon as you hang up and say adios, I'll think of something else. But it's been fun. I enjoyed my time there immensely. I still participate over there to some degree. I also spent 10 years at Cardinal O'Hara as their scout and film guy over there with Ann Chandra. I don't know if you know him at all, but he came from St. Mary's. He's the winningest coach. And then went over to Cardinal O'Hara. Of course, we were ranked number one in the state there. Well, we had a fellow named Reggie Gardner and Jackie Fagans who were co-players of the year back in, I'm going to say, 2007, 2006. And O'Hara had some great teams back then. We were very fortunate that Turner Carroll closed at the time. We picked up a lot of those players, brought in a new coach, an AD, and Ann Chandra. And that was a great time, too. That was just a wonderful experience.
How often do you get together with your former Ken West teammates? And when you do the stories get better?
Stories always get better. Everybody has a different experience.
Right.
Linemen have different experiences. Like I tell you, it was really like playing in 11 different boxes on offense. You never talked in the huddle. You never really talked afterwards. You just did what you were supposed to do, waited for your play to be called, and that's what you did. And for that, I think we reaped the rewards. I know you had asked me earlier, did I think we ran up the scores? Remember you asked me that?
Right.
And I had a lot about thinking about that. And I listened to Jerry Tutwiler's interview with you, and he tended to think we did. Now, first off, Jerry Tutwiler is a wonderful, wonderful man, a great coach, and I respect him dearly. And he's probably knows more than me. But I would argue that point. First off, you can throw Trot off the board. There's 8 games, throw Trot out, you're down to 7. NT was beating us at halftime, you're down to 6. Kenmore East, we're beating 37-0 at halftime. We didn't score in the second half. We didn't run up the score there. When you had an opportunity and your play was called, I mean, if I'm getting 3 passes a time and my play is called, you best bet I'm doing everything to get in the end zone because, that's what I want to do. So I don't think we ran up the score. I think we were just dominant. It reminds me, going back again, when at the Cardinal O'Hara days when I was there, we had a fellow, Reggie Gardner, again, Western New York Player of the Year. We played a very weak team in Niagara Catholic. They gave him the ball 5 times in a row and ran the same play. Okay? Now you think you'd be able to defend it? He ran for 5 touchdowns 5 times in a row. Each time the ref would throw a flag and do it again. We run the same play. Just say, look, just tackle us, will you? I mean, but there again, the offense is going to block. The runner's going to run. And doesn't he run for 5 touchdowns in a row until finally the ref goes, okay, we won't flag it. We'll give you the touchdown. So, no, I don't think we ran up the score at all. In fact, the year after that, they didn't even win the championship. So I think, again, I started out by telling you all the stars were aligned in a row. And it just was there. We didn't sit there and say, let's go out and beat them and score 50 points. Nobody ever said that. All they wanted to do is win the game. It just so happened that when you have enough talent, you're throwing right, you're throwing left, you're handing off, and the guy breaks the tackles and runs, and people are making the correct blocks, just score points. And it was just one of those that, you had, again, you had 2 juniors on the team. These are kids getting ready to go off to college. They're they're playable. And there's plenty of people on that team, and there were that played Division III and things like that went off and played football. So it was just one of those things that, what are we, 53 years now after the fact? And, the year after that, 2 years after that, three, we didn't make any big deal out of it. We didn't think we were anything special. And somewhere around, I think, the 10-year anniversary, we sat there and go, boy, we were pretty good. When you take a look back now with 10 years behind us and, 20 or 30 years of the NFL before that, I guess we were pretty unique in this. And so you tend to appreciate it. So you asked me, do I hang around? I play golf every Tuesday night at Sheridan with 12 guys from high school. And it can be a carnival sometimes because they start going on about stupid stuff, not only on the football field, but things that happen in high school. It's a big treat. I said one time, I said, I left Kenmore West with friends I made for a lifetime, but in 3 years, a lifetime of memories. And believe it or not, in 3 years, I have a lifetime of memories because, you pack an awful lot into 3 years,
Bill, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing these memories. This was a wonderful trip down memory lane. Thanks for taking us back to that 1969 season and your high school experiences at Kenmore West and your observations. You got some great stories, and thanks for sharing that. And let's chronicle this history together and share it with others. I want to wish you well, good health. Enjoy the sunshine down in Florida. And I know you're going to be you're a snowbird, so you'll be coming up to Western New York in no time. But Bill Tepas, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me today on the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel.
And I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come on to an NT football channel. When I first got your message, I said, "What's this all about?" But that's great that you'd include a Kenmore West guy in your NT Hall of Fame channel, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.